All right, it says when simplifying the product of two square roots of negative numbers, always take the negatives out of the square roots before simplifying. You should always take the negatives out of the square roots. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say I have negative 5, square root of negative 5 times square root of negative 5. What they want you to do, okay, they're saying that square root of negative 5 is the same thing as square root of negative 1 times square root of 5. Are you okay with that? What is the square root of negative 1? I. So we take that out. Okay?
Okay.
And so that's I times square root of 5. So far, so good? If I did the same thing over here, square root of negative 1 times square root of 5, what is negative 1? I. And this is square root of 5, right? So far, so good?
Yeah.
Well, square root of 5 times square root of 5 gives me what? If I'm multiplying this whole enchilada together. 5. What does I times I give me? I squared. What is I squared?
I squared is
Negative 1?
So what does that make this?
negative 5.
Negative 5. Okay, so that, we pulled the i's out first, right? If we hadn't pulled the i's out and we had just multiplied first, what's negative 5 times negative 5?
That'd be
25.
What's the square root of 25?
5.
It's 5, right?
5.
Does 5 equal negative 5?
No.
No, it doesn't. So the rule is, whenever you have a square root of a negative number, you've got to pull that negative out in the form of an I first, okay, if you're going to get the right answer. Okay? So let's look at these here. Square root of negative 49. So I'm going to rewrite that as two different square roots. I'm going to write it as the square root of negative 1 and the square root of 49. What is the square root of negative 1? What is the square root of negative 1? I. What's the square root of 49?
7.
Okay, and typically we would just write it as 7i. So far, so good?
Oh, okay.
Sweet? Yes? All right, next example, square root negative 12. Well, I'm going to rewrite it as the square root of negative 1 and then square root of 12. After you've done this a little while, you can kind of write it as I square root of 12, but until you really understand that I is the square root of negative 1 is such a good idea to rewrite it because you're reinforcing what that is.
Okay.
All right, so square root of negative 1 is I. What is the square root of 12? Well, it's like square root of 4 times square root of 3, right?
Yeah, so it'd be
So
2
that'd
square
be
root of 3.
2i times square root of 3.
That's how I would write it. 2i square roots of 3.
Okay.
Okay? Does that make sense, Katie? All right. And honestly, you know, unless I've been doing this a lot, I'll go ahead and write out what these are to make sure I get it right. Because if I start trying to do it in my brain, try to do too many things at once, it ends up messing up. So writing out your steps is always a good idea. Let's look at our next one. We've got the negative. Can I erase this?
Yes.
Okay, now we have a product, and this is where we have to make sure that we pull our eyes, pull your eyes out. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, negative 16 square root times negative 25. Okay. It's like pulling your hair out. No, this has made me pull my eyes out. Okay. Square root of negative 1 times square root of 16 times square root of negative 1 times square root of 25. Remember how we showed in that example that you will get the wrong answer if you multiply first. You got to pull your eyes out. Your square root of negatives out. All right, so this becomes I. What's square root of 16? 4. This becomes I. This becomes 5. Well, we just multiply like terms, right? 4 times 5 is 20. I times I is I square. What is I square?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. 20 times negative 1 is?
Negative 20.
Negative 20 all day long. Perfect. And these are basically the steps you're going to need to show me on that. Sweetness? You feel like you know imaginary numbers now? You're like, is she done yet? Let me go.
That's okay, her just pulling the eyes out.
Yeah. She wants my kids to pull their eyes out. She's insane. Okay. Are we ready? We need to pull our eyes out. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do this straight out. Should we do the negative 1? Or can we pull out the I?
Pull out the eye.
Pull out the imaginary numbers.
Let's pull out the imaginary number. I times square root of 12 times I times square root of 3. Now, once you have positives here, there's no reason I can't go ahead and multiply those puppies. Right? So this is going to look like I squared times square root of 12 times 3, which would be what?
36.
Square root of 36. What is the square root of 36?
6.
So I have I squared times 6, which is
Negative 6.
negative 6. I was trying to do it so I showed actually less
Nice.
work, but I didn't. But it's totally legal. It's not legal to multiply up here,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because you haven't pulled your eyes out. It is legal to multiply here because you have positives.
Yes. Once you pull your eyes out.
Once
then-
your eyes are out, you're good to go.
Yeah.
This is going to be a funny video. All right. Next one. Square root of negative 90 over square root of negative 49. So let's go ahead and pull out our imaginary. So let's see. This becomes I square root of 9 over I what?
Square root of 49.
49. Okay. Well, what is the square root of 9?
3.
3.
So this top is 3I. What's the bottom?
7i.
7I. Guess what I over I equals?
1.
1. So those would cancel, go to 1. So what am I left with?
3/7.
Perfect. 3/7. So in that case, it ended up knocking itself out, which is kind of funky. All right, let's do our last example on that one, which is the square root of negative 48 over the square root of negative 12. So we're going to pull our imaginary numbers out. Square root of 48, what would that be? 16 over, no, I'm going to do that different. You can do it that way, but let's just do it this way. I over I, correct?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
square root, and I can do it as 48 over 12,
Oh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just write it as a single fraction, right?
Yeah.
So that becomes 1 times square root of 4, which is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. I mean, you could do it different than that, but I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so cut